Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. Friends, it is a rainy, chilly, a breezy day out here in Bellingham, Washington. Cloudy, overcast, all the good stuff.
Borderline July.
Exactly. So, but sometimes when it's like stacked day after day after day like this, it's no fun. But when it's every once in a while, you get like an overcast day. It's like, oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
And then hopefully it goes back.
Yeah.
But yeah, geez, we're already 6 months into the year, which is wild. It's like at this point, like making like projections for 6 months out is like making projections for tomorrow. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
it's going to rip through very quickly.
This tastes pretty good.
Did we waste that 10 grams of
No.
geisha we threw in there?
No, it tastes pretty good. I'm slightly surprised. Not mad. Tastes pretty good.
Can you taste it?
Yeah. I'm surprised, guy. I didn't think I could, but yeah.
Yeah, it comes through very, very just
Yeah.
low key, but it's there.
Yeah, it's a 25-75 blend, so that's kind of shocking. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
it's pretty decent. The
funny thing is
the guat's just a little overpowering.
Well, yeah, it's 75%.
Yeah, which makes sense. But I think the guat is also. I don't even know if I can say this. I don't know if this is gonna sound stupid. The guat's slightly like under extracted.
I was gonna say that they shockingly taste equally extracted.
Oh,
For
okay.
both.
Never mind. Don't listen to me, folks.
I think. Well, you gotta remember that the guat has the sweetness on it. There was a time when we cupped the Jorge Mendes and we thought it was a Ethiopian, which is silly to say that we thought a watermelon coffee.
It is hilarious
We didn't
to say,
literally think it was the Ethiopian. We said it reminded us of an washed Ethiopian. There's some
when we were
elements
cupping it. I mean, this is
a long time ago.
this
4
is like
months ago.
Oh no, it was even further because we dropped the Jorge Mendes even before this year, right?
Or do we have the Jorge? No, I don't know. You're right.
So
I don't remember.
the reason why
we
I
have
say
this
that is
coffee
because
almost all year.
yeah, it's because I think when it was fresher, and we're cupping it next to our Duramina, Ethiopia, it had some similar similar qualities of like being bright, zippy. I mean, the
Bubbly,
Ethiopia that we had, the
effervescent.
Agaro, was very. I mean, it was just like grapefruit, lemon. I mean, which is like a very classic, also like a way profile, like very zippy and bright. And if we're talking about like a traditional,
But it's not like
washed-
chocolatey caramel. I think that's what we wrote in one of the roast curve profiles.
Yeah.
We said does not taste like a traditional chocolatey caramel guat,
Yeah.
but reminded us more of an Ethiopian.
Yeah. So
That's why I think it goes well with the geisha because there's that complementary acidity in both of them, but the sweetness is very much different in both of them.
it's very different.
So like
very,
complementary
very, very.
acidity and also the complexity of its own personal sweetness, like fruit sweetness versus this like nice, rich sweetness that comes from the guat, even though it's not full on chocolatey. You know what I mean? It's like, think about eating a fruit salad that has a lot of stone fruit, cherry, like a plum, like let's say peach, plum, and cherries, and then also throwing in some tropical fruit and garnishing it with lavender and jasmine or like a lavender oil. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
It tastes a little better when it cools slightly. It kind of mellows out a lot of the rough edges in it, and it becomes a little more
better mouthfeel.
Yeah.
It might be slightly under extracted, just slightly, but it's not far. I just went 11.5. We usually do 11.3 when I brew batch for the pod. Yeah.
I know this is nice. Yeah. So cool. I mean, it's not like wild or anything.
Yeah.
But it's Definitely has the complexity. Definitely has, some flavor.
Yeah.
It definitely, I mean, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
It would be a bonkers
Don't know what I
blend
was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a bonkers blend to drop. Just because, like, how do people brew blends most of the time? Like, if you're buying blend for home, I think batch brew, yeah.
I mean, batch brew or espresso.
Like, if
espresso
we were to,
is like a popular one.
That makes sense.
Because people are like, that's what
Yeah.
that's what I think
Blends,
is
yeah.
commonly synonymous. Like if you're brewing a coffee on espresso, it's like a common
House
theme
blend.
for it to be a house
Yeah.
blend, to be an espresso blend.
Zip
So,
Zinger.
Yeah. Whatever. Where's that from?
I think Zip Zinger is Dune's blend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, totally. Interesting.
So
That's good. I didn't even think about it. Like, if we were to drop a blend, we would really have to drop it with the intention of how people are brewing it.
yeah.
Right.
Or just tell them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
Hey,
wouldn't build a blend.
If you're drinking this blend, you have to drink it unfiltered.
Yeah.
And if you're not, straight to jail.
Jail.
Yeah. Speaking of Jorge Mendes, it should be actually arriving a little sooner this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're supposed to get it late June, early July, but that means now,
Yeah.
which is weird.
This week. Yeah.
Yeah. So that being said, it's fun that when we do drop the new Jorge Mendes, it'll just replace it on our menu, which is great because Jorge Mendes is now like a very big staple on our menu, and it's just for those of you who have had it, you guys know it's like it's not a 90 plus coffee,
Yeah.
but it's just a really, really solid Guatemalan that, the feedback that we often get on it is, this is exactly what I want out of a Guatemalan and more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, cool. That's so satisfactory to me.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times when people do have our Jorge Mendes, or I'm thinking of certain people that have our Jorge Mendes and have had it regularly, would say like, this coffee represents how well we roast, if that makes any sense. Like from a roasting perspective, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this coffee is just roasted so well. That's what I hear a lot from people about it. So it's good. And I mean, obviously we sell it here in Bellingham at Elizabeth Station, and that coffee flies at Elizabeth Station. Yeah. People buy that a lot. Yeah. Also, Francie sold out Elizabeth Station very quick.
Yeah. I mean,
it's like wild. It's just slightly over the price point on that coffee, slightly higher than the other ones, and it's sold out. Yeah.
Well, this in this episode, we wanted to dive into which is something that I think is probably the coolest trend, or I don't know. I don't even know if I want to call it a trend, but like a movement. I don't know. But it's been one of the coolest things that I've seen sweep the internet and coffee culture, that it's just the concept is really awesome. And that's the concept of doing these like house or apartment coffee shops, like turning my house into a coffee shop, or turning my apartment into a coffee shop. And, some folks Jimmy the Barista, who's been on the podcast, pretty well known. He's done something like that, but also like a lot of people have. I think the first time I came across this was on TikTok, and I was like, this is just the coolest thing ever. Like, and the folks have a really solid setup at home. We're not this isn't like a it is not a basic setup. People are doing this on their Lelite Biancas, or Rockets, and all these really stellar solid machines with all the bells and whistles, the WDT, the grinders, the everything. So and the fascinating thing about this is that it's a really insane setup, but also oddly enough, in the corner of your house, in a house setting, which again, this interesting bridge of home espresso aficionados or home baristas who have the Slayer inside the house. That for a long time, has been very just crazy. Like
Right.
that's
Yeah,
just ridiculous. Like you literally have a commercial style machine in your house.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know, that's to see that become like popular. And then also these people who are also like, they know how to brew coffee. Like
Yeah.
you probably get in it. Like my guess is if you like showed up to one of these, not all of course, but showed up to some of these that are pretty well done, you can get like a coffee that's probably better than 80% of your town's coffees, which is insane.
Yeah. It's also basically a lot of those setups that you're talking about are basically pop-up setups in their own home. Like, I think of, was it Numa Coffee, the homies down south in Seattle, like their setup that they do a pop-up with is what we're talking about. Like we see a lot of those setups in someone's home, and someone is just creating an environment in the context of their home, which, me, I'm a big fan of that. Like that's insane. That was my Brewers Cup routine, was the context of home. So to see that happen, to see that executed on another level because of the knowledge that these home baristas have and the equipment they have, is absolutely incredible. And from my perspective, I'm like, well, if you have the equipment, let's say you work a 9-to-5 job. How many shots of espresso, and especially if you don't work from home, how many shots of espresso do you get to pull at home for yourself? Not that many, right? Okay, let's say at max you're crushing through a pound a week. If you're crushing through a 5-pound bag a month at home on espresso, you're drinking a decent amount of coffee. And if it's just you and maybe your partner and that's it, you're drinking a decent amount of coffee. But your equipment is like capable of doing like 20-50x of that. So, and then on the weekend you have a lot of friends who are coffee people too, who love to hang. Why would you not? Right. Especially if you have, if you can accommodate the space to be like almost like a boutique cafe. Like I think of like Iron Rooster. Like the space of Iron Rooster is very similar to what could be someone's living room. And like, why wouldn't you? You have the equipment, you have the space, and you have the time. It's just a very fun outlet and a very fun output for a lot of folks to be able to create an environment around something they're obsessed about, like coffee. I mean, I think it's really, really cool. Like I think you and I, when we were living together, like we wanted to do that. I also don't think I don't underestimate the amount of work someone has to put in to pull that off, right? I've seen some people on, was it TikTok or Instagram, even create like menus for that day, for that pop-up.
Which I think, with everything you just said, which I think is part of the cool aspect of all of this, is that it takes a lot of time, for sure. You're going shopping, you're buying the cups, you're buying the lids, you're all the stuff that you would do for, let's say, running like a cafe, but like on a much, much, much smaller scale. And you have to make sure you have enough coffee, and you're dialing in coffee, and then you're making sure you have some syrups and all this stuff, all just for like one day for people to show up and have coffee. And that's I think is like the cool thing, is like you can put in all your time and your energy and your skill level, which again, these people that are running these, like some of them are pretty skilled and knowledgeable in coffee. They're investing all these resources, and then at the same time, it's without the pressure of having to maybe, I don't know, make enough money today to pay all your baristas. It's without the payroll. It's without the pressure of managing payroll, without the pressure of thinking that something's gonna go wrong. Like if the machine goes wrong, you're just like,
hey folks,
guys, I'm sorry. Like, I mean, you can still stay and hang. We have like some cookies or something, like,
dude, the vinyl's spinning, keep going.
Exactly. And it's without the pressure of all the stuff that comes from like running a coffee business, which, I mean, we've talked about this on the podcast. Like if you're the owner of a coffee business, chances are you are not enjoying pulling shots on a morning. Your new job title is not barista, it's coffee business owner. Like you are a business owner. That's what you do. You can work behind the bar from time to time, but you're the business owner. That's and that's the cool thing about this, is that like it has all of the ingredients and recipe of why almost all of us get into coffee. Like it has the tasty coffee. It has, you know, the nerding out around, you know, unique coffees. It has the community aspect, literally just a bunch of people coming into a living room. It has you know, like all the fun that you can imagine without almost most of the pressure.
Yeah.
And to me, I think, man, that to me is like that's just the golden middle. Like, and I also, on top of that, I think that's, because a lot of the pressures are off the table, I think it also is a very powerful way to build community. Like it, and I know community today gets so overthrown around all the time. It's like everyone's trying to build a community. Like Joe down the street who wants to open up a pizza shop is like, I just want to bring the community together. That's it's like, there are easier ways to bring a community together than opening up a business that might not last, you know, but it's like the most honest way of building a community, because you're doing this from your passion and you're inviting people from your desire for them to just be present and around, and that you get to share something with them that you've been working on, and it's no pressure for them to give you something in return.
Right.
It's this like, oh, I don't know. It feels like, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, maybe shifting the conversation a little bit, I just thought, like, how do we see this concept from the perspective of being a roasting company? You know, because we've sent coffee to these places that are doing the homes. We literally just donated a bag or two to someone. From that perspective, like, one, more of a statement than a question, or maybe a question, like, is this beneficial for the industry, or as a roasting company? Like, does this make us excited from a business perspective? Like, oh, like more people are consuming specialty coffee. Like you and I kind of talked about the Sprudge article and stuff like that. But it's like, is this where we could possibly see a sector of the avenue head? Like more people are going to do this because more people are owning this high-end equipment, and more people are actually not opening up cafes because they're scratching their itch a different way. Is this going to happen more? And is this good? Is this a good thing? Or because, and the reason some people might hear and be like, why wouldn't it be a good thing? Well, let's just play devil's advocate and say, like, okay, if people are popping up in your community at this little, like at your house, right? Let's say you're so cool and famous. You invited people over, and all 20 to 30 people showed up to your apartment, and they're all having coffee on that Saturday morning. Those are the people that were showing up to Narrative. So now they're not showing up to Narrative because they're showing up to your home pop-up. I'm just playing crazy devil's advocate there, right? Yeah. So that could be like, oh, well, that's different. You know what I mean? That's quote unquote not beneficial. But then on the grand scheme of things, would you think in more of a dialogue around the concept of like, how does this expand the specialty coffee consumption and community within your town, within your city? You know?
Yeah. I think from in two parts. Number one, like, does this help expand the coffee consumption and specialty coffee in general? I think 100%. This is very, very beneficial because, I mean, that's also to assume that everybody's drinking specialty coffee at these places. Not a fair assumption, but I think a lot of them are, because
well, if you're owning a Slayer,
just from all the cafes that I have seen on Instagram that are doing this, the home coffee shops, like almost all of them are, whether that's, you know, counterculture, whether it's like Onyx, you know, whatever it is. There was this post by Sprudge recently. I don't know, I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt. I feel there's something fishy about these statistics because they're just too wild. But it says, according to a recent report, 45% of American adults surveyed had consumed specialty coffee in the past day, a 13-year high. Overall, past day consumption of specialty coffee is up 80% since 2011. Most notably, it is the first time in the history of the NCA's reporting on the subject that specialty coffee has outpaced past day traditional coffee consumption, which came in at 44%. So that's saying that, like, the chances of you running into somebody and they had specialty coffee in the last day is twice 80 to 4 in comparison to 44%.
Yeah.
Is twice the amount as, what do they call it? I mean, even this, I don't like the way this is worded, but past day traditional coffee consumption.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little, it's not, I don't think it's like an accurate representation, because that, if you think about that, that just assumes that like a lot of people are drinking specialty coffee, and let's hope they know what specialty coffee is.
Yeah.
But I will say that just continues to raise that number.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, if you don't care about coffee, but you have a buddy or a friend, or you know somebody who invited you to this thing on the weekend, and you go and you drink like some, Mir or some Onyx at the small little home coffee pop-up, like, you just increased, like, 20 people showed up, you just increased that number.
Right.
Like, more people are getting, exposed to specialty coffee, which is always a win for the industry in general. But I think back to your question about, is it beneficial for, the coffee industry from a roaster's perspective? I think A, yes, but B, I also don't want to, like, I'm afraid to turn this into like a business conversation, because I'm like, that somewhat voids it of the cool factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that the point is, like, that it's not.
Yeah.
Like, that's which I know that's not the case with all of these pop-ups. Maybe somebody is literally starting this with just being like, hey, I want to own a coffee shop.
I want to practice.
And this is good practice for them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think a lot of people are not doing it for that sense.
Yeah.
They're just simply doing it because, I mean, it's just an overlap of a bunch of interests and hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think from the reason I bring up that perspective is because obviously when we see quote unquote trends in the industry, we have to look for patterns as business owners. Yeah. And when we see a certain consumption, a pattern within consumption, we have to then come up with with an idea of, like, what does this look like from a business perspective? So that's where I'm thinking. And the things that I do like about it, because like you said, a lot of these folks, a lot of the ways that you and I have found out about these pop-ups were because they went viral. Yeah. Yeah. And virality is like a big deal in business in today's age.
Yes.
So if a little pop-up goes viral like that, and someone just loves serving, their friends this and that, but they happen to do it around Mir, that's kind of a game changer, right? Yeah. And even without that, even if it doesn't go viral, the reality is, like, those people are drinking more coffee, which I think is a benefit to any roasting company, whether it's us, whether, like you said, it's Counterculture, who cares who it is? It's a benefit, because those folks are not only serving their friends, they're exposing their friends to maybe better coffee that their friends have never had before. Yeah. Right. And I mean, I'm also thinking about when we used to do the home cuppings with Jason Stevenson, right? A lot of the coffees that were brought on the table, I've never had before. Yeah. Yeah. Like Root Branch. Is it Root? No.
Those guys I brought from Ireland.
Yeah. You brought those. Yeah. Like, I've never had that coffee before until that cupping. Or maybe around that time of the cupping. So that was an atmosphere for me, even someone who already was working in the industry, to get exposed to other roasters that I never had, because Jason would host these experiences at home around coffee. So that's where I think, like, okay, that's a very cool benefit to your community. That's a very good way to, quote unquote, serve your community. But that's also a amazing benefit for roasters, and for people who actually are like selling like a whole bean coffee.
Yeah.
I think that's great because one, the exposure, and two, the ability to have people taste. Like I would love, like, if there's someone who's like, oh dude, I've been crushing these things for a while, dude, I would send them coffee.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude, yeah, heck yeah, have some more coffee, like serve the people, like,
Yeah.
So I think it's very beneficial from all aspects. The fact that it's cool, the fact that it's not, there's like a low risk for those folks. They can mess up whatever, it doesn't affect anyone. They're all friends hanging. But it's also cool from a business perspective where we're like, oh, sick, like those folks enjoyed our coffee.
Yeah. And I think in general also it's like social media and just the virality of these things or the exposure of these things is like they low-key kind of like shape culture. Like,
yes,
for example, like if you were to look at like the Queen's Gambit when it released and all of a sudden everybody got like the jump in people interested in chess, or the F1 series that was like, dude, nobody even cared about F1 and now everyone and their mom is like interested in it. And it's like, like there's probably some data out there that literally shows like before the Netflix series and after.
Yeah. Well, we have a friend who, or someone you worked for, literally was like, dude, their sales skyrocketed after the series.
Oh, for the chess. Yeah. So a lot of these things, they like shape the way we view things, and oddly enough, they shape what we're interested in as well. So if a lot of these things are gaining exposure, and you're seeing them, and you're seeing your friends do this, there's a very good chance that you're probably going to want to buy a setup for yourself. At some point. It's very interesting. Like, I'll have people all the time, like people who are not in coffee, like will be like, oh yeah, do you use those spiky things? And I'm like,
nice.
Yeah, like WDT. And I'm like, how the heck do you know that? They're like, oh, I just saw it all over Instagram. Like, and that's crazy. Like, for people to be like average people who just don't care about coffee, but they're now exposed to like some spiky things that you like massage your coffee. And I guess it makes it taste better. Like, we don't give that enough value, like enough credit, because that's shifting a lot of today's, just the coffee culture of the United States. Like quite drastically. So I think these things are cool. They're shaping how we drink coffee on a big scale. So
100%. Plus, we all know that when you're at home with your friends, you're probably gramming and TikToking quite a bit. One, it's home, and two, it's with all your friends. It's cool. So I think it's super dope. I think it's very beneficial. Like, if this was something that happened, like if 10% of coffee consumers did this, I think it would, like, again, we talk about the impact of home baristas on the industry. I think this would be even more insane of an impact,
So well, shout out to all the home baristas who are just crushing it at their home cafes. Just exceptional. If somebody's doing this in Seattle or in Bellingham, friends, hit me up. I'll show up. I'd love to. That'd be cool. But that being said, thank you so much for listening to yet another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and as we always say, reflect what's good.